Hey y'all, it's Queen J back with another episode of Let's Get Uncomfortable. I am finally back. I do not feel so great, but I feel well enough to give y'all this episode, give myself this episode because, y'all, before we get into today's topic, I've been in my head a lot. And sometimes it's a good place to be and sometimes it's not. So, before we get into today's topic, I just want to preference this episode by saying that. We're going to start there. Now, as you know, before we get into our topic, we have our little mindfulness. So, let's get into it. Pause, breathe, relax. It is now time to open our mind to be exploring and welcome and receiving to healing within this lifetime. It is now time for us to process different ways to navigate around healing and the obstacles that come with healing during this lifetime. It is now time for us to be welcoming and appreciative of our vulnerability and the ability to connect with one another through that strength of our vulnerability. All right, y'all. All right, y'all. I really hope that allows you guys to feel centered, feel calm your minds down a little bit. It did that for me. It always does that for me when I take my moments of silence, take my little mindfulness that is so vital to just my daily life. That is vital to my podcast, vital to, like I said, my daily life. So what I want to talk about for this topic is, hopefully we won't have to have any trigger warnings for this one. But I want to talk about this crazy society that we live in that has somehow brainwashed us into believing that any form of, I have no clue. I don't know if y'all got that or not. If you did, I'm sorry. Not taking it out. I want to discuss the ways that society has made us feel like toxicity, manipulation, gaslighting, anything that is supposed to detriment our mental health, is justified in some manner. And I'm not going to say it's all across the board just justified, but it is definitely very highlighted. And it's something that I've realized that, like, I don't even have to be following these accounts to know that toxicity has become something that society colloquially has just chosen to accept. Like, yes, there are some podcasters like myself, and there are some poets like myself, and there are some other artists like myself, but it's not that many of us that are like, okay, I'm not going to fall prey to that toxicity, or I'm not going to, quote unquote, be involved or actually engage in those things that actually bring me peace. I'm going to preach about it, right? But I'm not actually going to follow or practice what I'm preaching. I have no clue what's going on, y'all. But it's almost like there are certain influencers, and this I'm going to bring this back up. It's going to come back to healing in just a moment, but it's almost like there are certain influencers, there are certain, like, social media is like profiting off of toxicity. Just to keep it in a nutshell. And in addition to that, it's almost like it's supposed to be You're supposed to be okay with it. Like for example, in my healing, I have witnessed and experienced a ton of people manipulate me, and I have reflected upon the manipulation that I experienced at a younger age. And I realize that it's manipulation, and I call it out like when it happens, when I see it. And it's almost like people cannot accept that. People have a hard time of being like, looking in the mirror. It's really hard for us as humans to look in the mirror and be like, I messed up. It is. It's hard for me to do. It's hard for all of us to do. But I think it's because a lot of people lack a sense of awareness, a self-awareness, where it's like, okay, that may not have been my intention, but it still came off the wrong way. And I still need to own that. But instead, this is where gaslighting and manipulation comes in, because a lot of the people that, if you call them out, if you say, I'm going to call you out on your stuff, I'm going to call you out, a lot of them will backtrack and they will say something along the lines of, not even, I understand your experience, but more like, you did this, when in actuality, you actually didn't do that. So I feel like I've touched on this topic once before, but I feel like it bears repeating. Gaslighting is literally taking someone's reality and making it so that they don't believe that they're actually existing or living in that reality. So they're not living in their actual truth. So like, this happens a lot, especially when we have arguments, especially when a party is healing and another party is unhealed. So if you're having a conversation with someone who is grossly unhealed and they refuse to do the work on themselves, and you yourself have done the work, and you have seen that, oh, this is an unhealed part, this is something that I need to address, this is, you have set those things where you said, okay, I have now mastered my piece, I'm not going to react, I'm just going to be calm, you know what I mean? All those things to keep yourself together. And then this person is not doing any of that, or hasn't done as much as you have. Then there's going to be some conflict. And usually that conflict comes about when one party is saying, hey, they're being the quote unquote bigger person, and they're saying, hey, I miss you, it's been a while, we need to talk, something along those lines. We've all had those messages, we've all had those talks, those conversations. Well, the gaslighting starts to come into play when you then start to say, okay, well, this is my perspective of it. This is how my emotions came about. This is how I was affected by what was said the prior time that we talked, the previous conversation that we had. And then that other person says, well, no, that's not true. And they start to say, well, I never said that. And I didn't do that. And I never said that. And that was someone else. You must have me confused with someone else, or something along those lines, right? Now that is like the most minimal, the very small things, the little sprinkles of gaslighting. I'll call them little sprinkles because they're so tiny that unless you're fully cognizant of what's going on and you're fully present in the conversation, you can easily skip past it. You can easily be like, oh, well, that's okay, because that's just natural for us to say, that's okay, I just wanted you to know, when in fact it's not okay. Even those little nuggets of doubt, those little nuggets of insecurities that they're sprinkling into your brain are not okay. And I say this from personal experience because I myself have been dealing with a familial situation, a healing situation that I have mastered. And this was not easy for me to master. Y'all, let's get uncomfortable. Let's talk about it. This was not easy for me to master, not in any way, shape, or form, because what it did was I literally had to stay rooted in my peace to say my peace. I'm going to say that again. You have to stay rooted in your peace to say your peace. I don't think y'all hear me. You have to stay rooted in your peace to say your peace. It doesn't matter how you're going to come across. Doesn't matter how they take what you're saying. What matters is that it is said. So, because I'm raw with you guys and I don't sugarcoat anything, I was having an issue with an individual that's very close to me for years. And I never picked up on the subtle manipulation because of the simple fact that this person is so close to me. I've had this soft spot for them, things of that nature. But life played its card and I reached out and we ended up having a conversation. And me being myself, I asked the questions. I said, so essentially, we haven't talked in a while. What's up? What happened? Because I'm not one to shy away from having those type of conversations, hence the podcast. But when I asked, I could feel the shift in energy. I could feel the defensiveness on the other end. I could feel it already. And once I said that question, once I asked the question, it immediately turned into, well, we were doing the same thing and you did this and you did that. And it was like, what? That's not what I asked. Like, I know what I had asked. And so rather than getting defensive and reacting, I held my peace, held on to my peace, my sanity. And I just simply said, I understand if that's the way that you felt. That's valid, 100%. But you may not remember the conversation, but I do. And it took a lot out of me to finally say, like, yeah, I'm going to be real with you. You are entitled to your own opinion. You are entitled to your own feelings. Those are forever going to be valid. However, in this scenario in which we are discussing, this is just not the case. I felt this way, and this is what ensued, and this is what happened. This was the aftermath. And it wasn't me belittling this person or demeaning them or making them feel small or making them feel like what they felt wasn't valid. In fact, it was saying, that may have been how you felt, but let me tell you my side. Let me tell you my perspective, because I'm over it. At this point, I can spot gaslighting. I can spot manipulation. So what do I look like allowing myself to be subjected to it just because you're someone that I once held in a close spot to me? And it's hard for me to say that. But I think if I could wrap it up with a tight little bow and give to you guys, I would say that hold on to the fact that you have that self-awareness. To really tune into that, because it allows you to call people out when you see it, rather than reflecting on it months later and you're like, I didn't like that conversation, or I actually was triggered in that moment. And I don't want you to feel that it's reacting, because again, I held on to my peace and I said what needed to be said. Now, this is after years and years of going back and forth on, should I even say this? I mean, I don't like when this person does that, and making me drive myself crazy because I'm over here questioning the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is, unfortunately, this person just does not care as much as I do. They just don't. And you can see that in simple conversations, especially if people are close to you and they still don't give you the chance to actually say what you need to say, then that's kind of a telltale sign of basically deciphering whether or not either you've outgrown the friendship or outgrown the relationship with them or whatever the case may be. But after I was expressive and I was steadfast in what I was saying, I was in the middle of getting to the point of, I'm over this and this is how I feel about this now. I hope that whatever the outcome was going to be, or whatever I was going to finish saying, I didn't get a chance to because I was cut off and really never given the chance to say my piece, which is also a common theme with this person. So it was really interesting because afterward, I was kind of reeling, like yet again, reeling with emotion, reeling with thoughts and overthinking for a little bit. And it lasted probably about an hour, which is record timing for me to, especially with, like I said, this person's very close to me. And in that hour, I had went through every single emotion. I had thought about it. I didn't even replay the conversation. It was more so about the fact that what was unsaid and how it keeps being unsaid. And not because I'm not saying it, but because the other party is not allowing me to. They are fully aware of what I'm going to say next, and they don't want to hear it. And so I thought about that, and I sat with that for a moment. And I had to sit there and I had to think and I had to really come to terms with that myself and accept it for what it is, because this is the reality of the situation. And the thing is, I was being gaslit. In that moment, I was being manipulated into believing that the nature of our relationship fell upon my shoulders yet again because of something that I had done, but I knew damn well that I hadn't done. So in that moment, I chose to speak up. And I chose to say, no, that's not what this is. Let's not do that. Because what you're not going to do is manipulate me into thinking that I'm the villain, when I know damn well that you just want a villain for your story. A lot of people, especially when we're healing, oh my goodness, they love to have a hero, a villain, a savior, whatever you want to call them. They love to characterize every individual person in their life. And I started to do that too early on in my healing journey. Like, oh, that's not someone I can have. That's a close confidant, whatever the case may be. But I realized these roles change. These roles change day in and day out. And if you did it that way, if you chose to heal that way, or if you choose to heal that way, I would just say be very mindful of trying to make everyone fit a trope or a role, because we're people. We change, we grow, we make mistakes. And I'm not saying to discredit someone simply because of their one mistake. But here's the thing. If you know you're in a cycle with somebody and it's the same cycle and it's literally a lack of boundaries, they don't care, all this other, and you can name a list and the list goes on, and you know how they make you feel after they leave, and you know how they make you feel when they're in your presence, then honestly ask yourself, is it worth it? Is fighting on to this feeling, this temporary good feeling that they give me for when we have our ups, is it worth me feeling miserable later? Is it worth me feeling miserable later? Because that is how my situation was. Constantly getting the high of, oh, we're perfect, we're good, I can talk to you, we're fine. And then being let down in the last second. Being crushed because I can't say anything about their character. And if I do, I'm suddenly the bad guy because everyone else is already talking about their character. So, can't really do nothing. Can't really say nothing. Can't really express how I'm feeling or how they're causing me to feel because ding ding ding, I'm triggered, but I can't express it because this person isn't going to like it and I'm walking on eggshells now. So it's a I don't want to say necessarily toxic, but it is a very unhealthy and stagnant foundation when you think of it from a bigger picture. Especially looking at it from the lens of I'm being gaslit. And I have to then, after speaking with this person, I have to then check myself, check with other people that know me pretty well, and ask them, do I come off this way? And this isn't just with one incident. This has been with, I will say, 3 people within the past year. One of them that has been reoccurring and because they're really connected to me. Other person just really met them and didn't really realize that I was being gaslit until it was too late. And that can happen too. And the third person is just kind of like me noticing the red flags and not saying anything. Like I'm not it's a double negative. So I am saying something, y'all. It's a double negative. So I actually am calling it out for when I see it. But what it is gaslighting is so subtle. The thing is, it's not always this big grandiose thing where someone is saying, that's not your reality. It's not always this big blaring sign of that's not your reality. That's not what it is. That's not what it is because trust, I had to realize that for myself in my life that gaslighting is very, very subtle. I actually watched a video. It was a short film on gaslighting. It was all about this couple, this woman who basically started her dating with this guy based off of a lie that he created. And in this short film, it's on YouTube. In this short film, this lady is getting coffee, and this is how they meet. She doesn't have the money to pay for her coffee, so the guy steps up and he says that he'll pay for her coffee and that essentially she owes him a date, pretty much. She thinks he's cute, so she says yes, not knowing and not realizing that she was just manipulated into dating him in the first place. So, following that tract, the movie goes on. Essentially, they get together. At one point, she and her best friend are like super close. They're always hanging out. They're always talking and things like that. He isolates her very slowly from the rest of her friends and only keeps in touch with the best friend. And she's drinking wine. She likes wine. She's drinking wine. And whenever he sees her drinking wine, he calls her an alcoholic. But you don't find this out until at the end because essentially what was going on was he was isolating her from her friends. He contacted her best friend when she tried to reach out to her best friend for help and say that she didn't feel safe. He then turned her best friend on her, and her best friend was like, well, are you sure you don't have a problem? You have been drinking a lot lately. You know, so-and-so says that. And that's when she freaked out. She was like, you talked to him? And she was like, yeah, like he talks to me on occasion or whatever. And then in the final scene, everything comes to a head because she goes to a dinner party for the guy that she's dating. They're living together at this point. And she's sitting there. She's talking up with his boss, and she's just getting to know people in his company, and he's extremely insecure. They get home, he yells at her, he hits her, it becomes physically abusive, and it gets to the point where, coincidentally, when everything was going on, she reached out to her best friend. She called her best friend. Now, mind you, she keeps waking up, she keeps having these things happen, and she's thinking that it's her. So she's not aware that it's actually her reality and that her self-esteem is shot. She's depressed. So what happens is, and this is at the end again, but what happens is they have a fight. The whole fight is in a voicemail, because before the fight happened, she put her phone down to call her friend. I guess she had put it on speaker, or the phone was just resting on the table after she had grabbed a glass of wine. Her boyfriend comes in, hits her, calls her a lazy drunk, says she has no ambition. You know, he beats down her self-worth with these damaging phrases, damaging words, because it makes him feel better as a man, makes him feel better as a person, right? And it's all caught. It's all proof that she's not crazy, because in the end, the best friend is on the other line listening to it all the next morning, because it's a voicemail. So the next morning, she's hearing everything, and you're listening to it with her, because for the first time, it's being exposed that he's been hitting her, he's been verbally abusive, he's been mentally abusive, he's been physically abusive, all these things. And it just points a really, really vivid picture of what gaslighting really is. It is very subtle. It is not alarmingly there until oftentimes it's too late. You're smack dab in the middle of it. And at this point, it's your reality. So and this is just the mindset of what you're in, often what you're in when you're thinking in this way. What can I do about my reality? I'm worthless. These are the thoughts. So I'll do a little trigger warning here. These are the thoughts. These are the things that could occur if you're in a situation where you feel like you're being gaslighted. How can I fix this? I don't have the power. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the energy to feed into this anymore. What is the point? This is my reality. It's almost like a settling feeling that happens, because I experienced it not too long ago, and no one knew, because I was voicing what was going on, but I also wasn't voicing how it made me feel. I wasn't being completely honest with my friends. I didn't start being completely honest with the people in my life until I had a wake-up call. And ironically enough, it wasn't something that he had said. It was something that happened within me. Something that I had already experienced, but something that rustled within me. And I was talking with my neighbor about it, and my neighbor was like, "Oh, honey, I was actually letting her hug me, and we were talking about it." And she was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's not that big of a deal. I've been through this stuff before. It's okay. He's not even my boyfriend, so it's fine." I was justifying it because he wasn't my boyfriend. But then I thought, if he's my friend, why is this occurring in the first place? If this is still someone that supposedly cares about me, pointing out my every flaw, making me feel like I have nothing to offer, these things aren't something that someone would do that care about me. So then I finally just started being honest, and I started saying, like, hey guys, I don't know how this happened, but I'm here and help. And shortly after I said help, I started meditating more, started doing my own thing, just really detaching myself, because I didn't like fully isolate myself when I was in the situation. In fact, that's what he wanted. But it never got to that point because I knew what was occurring and I didn't allow it to happen. Like, true story. True story. This person came to my house at one point randomly, and I have a boundary where I don't allow people in my home unless you were invited, unless you tell me that you were coming. So that right there was like, he came to my house. It was scary. It was so scary for me. That was a boundary. He then crossed that boundary. And it was like, oh my God, this is it. I can't do this anymore. And I'm not going to lie, at first, yeah, it was fun. It was a cool thing. And I was okay with it. But when I started to realize just how much my boundaries were being ignored, I couldn't go on, because I knew it was going to be dangerous for me in the long run. And then it got physical at one point. Physical to the point where I was put in that position of, okay, I'm about to mess you up. Like, I don't care if we're playing. I'm no longer playing anymore because I've told you to stop. That type of thing. And things of that nature. And of course, I reacted, but it's neither here nor there. The reality in which I was living was not the reality that he wanted me to exist in. The reality that this person wanted me to exist in was the reality that they concocted, that they controlled. And that was very apparent, because listen, y'all, this was not so subtle at sometimes. Like, there were clear sentences of, you're not in control here. I am. Oh, okay. And that makes you leave too. Oh. And that makes you question, that makes you a little fearful, But also, at that point, it was like, I'm scared. I don't know how to get out of this. And I had to admit that to myself. But I made a plan. And that plan thoroughly involved me being honest with myself and saying, this is not it. I know that I'm a good communicator, and I'm a good person who wants to really get to the nitty gritty of what the hell's going on here, so that I can at least salvage a friendship or some type of bond with this person. But at that point, it had become too much. I even opted for myself being, okay, we could still be friends. We could still kick it, whatever. And then it became even more apparent that the situation was more physical than I had originally thought. And so when that was occurring and I'm realizing that, and at that time, it was kind of like, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I need. And I need to break away. So I held on to my power by reminding myself that's not who I am. And something that really helped me throughout these two situations, because they kind of connect, because in the fact that both individuals felt entitled to me and didn't care about my needs, and don't. Um, Someone's perception of you is not your reality. Someone's perception of you is not your reality. And I feel like, yet again, I feel like I might have talked about this before on one of the episodes. But to be honest, I really don't remember. I don't recall. This is like episode 10, so I really don't remember. But someone's perception of you is not your reality. It just isn't. And that's a hard thing to grasp, especially when you're in that moment of like, okay, yeah, that's got to be true, right? Because I did X, Y, and Z, and now they're reacting to X, Y, and Z, right? But that's just not the truth. I'll tell you what the truth is. Okay? Because we are all about getting uncomfortable, digging to find the truth, digging to heal those unhealed parts of ourselves, right? So the truth is, it was all projection. It was all projection. That person or people, those persons, literally had their own issues with themselves, and they knew, oh, Janae's easy to talk to. She's very understanding, we've been talking for this long. We've been, you know what I mean? Like, I can always turn to this person, yada, yada, yada. I'm entitled. I am now entitled to her because that's how I am as a person. I need that to feel secure in myself. So that sense of entitlement, that's where it comes from. But in addition to that, oh, well, let's not deal with my actual insecurities. Let's project them onto someone else by calling them worthless, by calling them these things, by making them question their reality, making them question their own sanity, because that gives me control. That gives me power. Key word, that gives me control. As I mentioned, one of the people said, "You're not in control here. I am." And that was on several different occasions. And I knew that they wanted to be in control of me, but I would never allow that. I didn't allow that. I actually was more in control of the situation this time around, maybe because I had already experienced it with another individual. But having that experience helped me really control and keep my power, my sense of identity. Because it's really easy to lose it, especially with someone close to you. I don't care who it is. Whether it's a friend, a family member. If they're manipulating you to believe that what you say is false, then chances are they weren't for you. Chances are they don't deserve to experience your energy. I've been seeing a lot of posts today, a lot of posts throughout this entire week that have talked about the ramifications of gaslighting and mental manipulation. And the thing is, so often we get pissed with ourselves for the nature of it even happening in the first place. Like, how did I even get myself in this situation to begin with? And the answer to that, you didn't. The hard answer to that is you didn't. You didn't allow yourself to be in that situation. You just didn't see it because the person didn't want you to. They didn't want you to. For those 4 or 5 months or however long your situation may have lasted, or however long that they were the quote unquote good person that they want to be, there's a timer. There's a time limit. And they know that. You get the good version of them, the person, the ideal person, the person with all that potential. You get that person for like a good 4, maybe 3 months tops, good 3 to 4 months. I give them that time frame. And then after that, you've already become connected. You've already shared stories. You've already hung out. You guys have already made a bond within that time frame, within that short amount of time frame. And that's how it happens. That's how people find themselves in these mentally twisted situations, because someone ideally is showing their ideal self in the beginning until they can't show that anymore. They can't be that. They can't pretend anymore. And they have no choice but to reveal who they actually are. But by that point, you've already seen who they could be. So as hopeless romantics, like myself, we're going to fall for that potential. If we fall for that potential, regardless of, like I said, if it's a romantic nature or just a friendship, whatever, if we fall for that, if we already know that this is the person that we like, and this is the version of them that we like, well, maybe we can get it back. Maybe it does still exist because it existed, right? So that has to be the person, right? Sadly, we're wrong. We're so wrong, because the thing is, that person has already said, I'm okay with this. They've already settled for themselves, for the low version of themselves. They have no aspirations to get to that potential self. They want to be that, but they don't have the aspiration and the drive and the motivation to kick it in the high gear and actually be that. They can pretend to be that all they want, but they can't actually fulfill it. And it's not for you to do. It's for them to do. So all that projection, all that insecurity, all that manipulation, all that gaslighting, all the condescending, subtle mockery things, it's all their own insecurities coming back on you, because they don't know what to do with it themselves. They don't know how to heal, or they don't have the patience to heal. Gaslighting is not something that is easily healed from. And honestly, if you look at it from this really broad perspective, someone has been cloaking their identity in something else for so long. And then they finally take the cloak off and they say, here I am. Love me anyway. Wouldn't you need to heal from that too? And what's underneath the cloak is nothing but rude, condescending, manipulative, narcissistic, toxicity, poisonous personality traits. Wouldn't you want to heal from that too? Wouldn't you need to heal from that too, because you were duped into believing that they were the person that was kind, loyal, supportive, healthy, even with minimal baggage? Like, we all have baggage, we all have trauma, but they were nice, they were patient, they were loving, they were caring, they were everything that they wanted to be, but actually couldn't. That's the hard part about this, is letting go of that potential. This has been episode 10 of Let's Get Uncomfortable. I appreciate you guys so much for listening and hearing me. I really do. Thank you for seeing and hearing me. If you want to donate, the Cash App is going to be listed below, but my Cash App is Poetis20. And Thank you for seeing and hearing me. This has been Queen J with Let's Get Uncomfortable. We made it to episode 10, guys. Oh my God.